In this lesson, we will implement task updating in our application. To start, I will add a new component to our Blazor project, task edit. I will also add a C# file right away. So new item, task edit, razor.cs. I will mark this class as a partial class. First, I will set the URL address for this page. I also want the data updating to be available at the address task edit. Importantly, I will want the task identifier, which we want to update, to be passed as a parameter, and the identifier in our project is an int. Therefore, I need to indicate this here, and I will read this identifier from the URL address. I can also add this parameter in the C# code right away, like this. In our application, the ability to edit a given task will be available in two places. First, by clicking on the title in our table, and second, by clicking on the edit button also in this table. So we need to handle this. Please go to Tasks, Razor. Here, we have navigation when clicking on the title. As you can see, we have this task address through edit. And here, we pass the identifier from this for each iteration. As for the edit button, we also made it a link because it only redirects to task edit and item ID. If I rebuild the application now, clicking on the title redirects us to edit the task, and the same happens when clicking the edit button. This is already done, and now we just need to implement the view and code in C#. This view will be very similar to the code in the task add component, so I will copy all this code and paste it into task, edit, and then adjust a few things. First, the URL remains the one we defined earlier. We change the title to edit task. The same goes for the h1 header, and here, basically, nothing else changes. We have the editing of the title, description, whether it's done, deadline, and save button. Great, so I'll just copy the code we have in C# from task, add razor.cs, and paste it into task, edit, and then we'll just adjust it. First in task, edit, razor.cs. We won't be working with add, task command, but with edit, task command, so I need to adjust that here. I'll move these private fields to the top of our class to keep things organized. Great. Now, when editing a task, we want to pre-fill the form with the current data of the task being edited. So we'll add an on, initialize method, override on, initialized, async, and here we'll display the current task data that we're editing. We'll call task, repo, and a method to fetch the task data from the database. So we need to add such a method to our repo first. I'll copy get all and name it get edit, passing an int id, and I want this method to return the task, specifically edit task command, which contains the task information. Great, let's move on to task repository. I noticed another mistake in the name of our interface, eTask, repository and task, repository. I forgot to add the information that this is an HTTP repository, so it should be named iTask, HTTP, repository. I will change this name throughout the project, and the same goes for task, HTTP, repository regarding the implementation of this interface. Great. Now I will add the implementation of the new interface, which is get edit. This should be an asynchronous method, and there will be a single line call here, await, client, get, from JSON, async, and the type to be returned, which is edit, task, command. The path is tasks, edit, and I want to pass the identifier. So we will use string interpolation here, the identifier in this way. I want to call this HTTP get action from our web API in the task controller, where we need to pass the name edit and the task identifier, for which we want to retrieve information. Great, so this is what our repository looks like. Let's return to our component and C# code. So task edit, razor.cs. Now, in task repo, we will call the get edit method and pass our parameter in this component, which is this ID. So this task identifier, which will be passed here to this component. Great, and we also need to update the save method, which will be called when the save button is clicked. Instead of adding a new task, we want to edit an existing task in the database, so we need to add a new method to our iTask HTTP repository. Let's call it edit, And here the parameter will be edit, task, command. Let's move on to the implementation. Implement the interface. It will be an asynchronous method await, client, and this time we call the put as JSON async method, and similarly we pass the task and parameters edit, task, command. This way the HTTP put action from our controller will be called. Okay, let's go back to the component, and now in the save method we call the task repo edit method. Great. We can also adjust the message to task has been updated. Now I am running the application to verify if everything works correctly. So I go to edit, for example, this task role management, and notice that we have the date set to the 4th and the completed status set to yes. So first of all the data was loaded correctly, and I will change the completed status to false and change the date to October 3rd, save the data, and notice that it has been updated. It has been updated. I will also change the title to role management in the application, save it, and as you can see, the title has been updated again, so everything is working correctly. We also have a message in the top right corner saying task has been updated, and after saving, we are redirected to the main page of our application, which is the page with all the tasks. Now, I invite you to the next lesson, where we will handle the delete button in our application.